Okay, here we have a special last day of class, final exam review. So what is the first question to review?
Photoshop color separation, please.
So Photoshop color separation, what does that have to do with anything? So we looked at this when we were finishing up our posters and our spot illustrations, and it's understanding how in Photoshop you can mimic the color separations that happen in professional printing. And so professional printing is done not with inkjet printers, but with lithograph plates on a high-speed press. And the way you get a mix of colors in a textbook or in a poster or in anything else is by printing 4 inks, 3 colors. So those 4 inks are cyan, magenta, yellow, and then black. And the shorthand for that is Cmyk. And with that, we can create the thousands of colors we're able to see in print. It's very different than the millions of colors we can see on a screen, because a screen uses RGB light to make its images, but when you print, you have to do it with pigment. So if I open up a really colorful image, let's take the newest Star Wars poster here. They released this poster online, but they'll also have it printed and posted on bus stops, in movie theaters. And so when we look at it online, we don't see only 4 colors when we zoom in. We see millions of colors of pixels, right? And what the computer is doing is showing us with 3 lights in our monitors, red, green, and blue lights. If we go to channels, we can see what each of those light programs is doing. So this is what the blue lights are doing. Where it's black, the blue lights are turned all the way on. No, I'm sorry, reverse. Where it's white, the blue lights are turned all the way on. Where it's black, the blue lights are turned all the way off. And then we add green to it, and you see with the green overlaid on the black, without the blue, it will show as this is the green layer in just black and white. And then with the red, you get the full color spectrum. If you mix just red and green, you get this. If you mix just red and blue, you get this. And if you do all 3 RGB, you get the full colors in RGB light spectrum, millions of colors. Now, what if I go to image mode and change it to Cmyk color? It's going to limit our colors to only those that can print. So you can see the difference around here. See how that lightsaber becomes a lot less vibrant because it's no longer being mixed with red, green, and blue light. Instead, it's being mixed with inks, or an approximation of inks, Cmyk. So if I turn off everything but just the blacks, this would be the last thing you print. And where it's white, you would print no black. Where it's black, you would print full bleed black. And then black with yellow looks like that. Yellow on its own looks like that. So where the black is, that's full bleed yellow, just solid yellow. So on and so on. Okay? So that's all for Cmyk. The problem is, it's still a digital image. It's not separated into the colors. So if I zoom in, I still see millions of colors of pixels. So this is just a visual representation of the possible colors that can be mixed with Cmyk. To get it to actually mix, I have to run an action that I've created for you. And there's a great book that teaches you how to do this. It's called How to Letter and Color the DC Way. And it goes through all these steps. But basically, I'm going to do a full Cmyk run on this image. And that is doing digital separations within Photoshop. And to do that, you have to isolate the Cmyk channel. So it's just a black and white channel. And then you have to tell it how many dots to separate it into. And the end result is something like this, where you only see those colors. So here's the cyan layer, here's the magenta layer, here's the yellow layer, and they're all set at a slightly low opacity because the inks that you print with are not 100% opaque, because the idea is that they overlap on each other and make the different colors. And here's the black layer on top. And you can see how that makes the image. Here are the individual layers on their own. And you can see the yellow layer is made up of all these little dots. So these are called halftones dot screens. And combined, they give you it. So what do you need to know about color separating? You need to know that first, in order to prepare a digital file in Photoshop for color separation, you have to change its mode to CMYK. Get it out of the light spectrum, put it into the printing spectrum. And then when you are adjusting your halftone screens, you have to give them each a different angle so that they overlap on each other without blocking each other out, so that they're offset from each other to give you optical mix of colors. You even have to do that for just black and white. So that's the difference between RGB color and CMYK color. You have to add black ink there. And that's what we're going for. So if I go back to my JPEG, if I change it to CMYK mode, and then I want to get one of those color separations, I have to isolate just the cyan layer under channels, and then I have to change its mode first to grayscale mode, and then to bitmap mode, which only sees black and white. And when you change from grayscale to bitmap, that's where it creates the halftone screen. And so I can output it at 300 pixels per inch or whatever I want to print, that's standard, as a halftone screen, but I have to pick an angle. And black is the only one that should be 45 degrees. So this is, which one did I do? I don't even remember.
You did Photoshop color separation, RGB mode versus white.
I guess I'm asking what color did I do? Let me see in my history. Because once it's black and white, it's hard to tell. So if I go to my history, yeah, I don't know which one. I think I did the cyan one. So I take the cyan layer, isolate it, convert its mode to grayscale, then convert its mode to bitmap. And now because I know I'm doing cyan instead of black, it can't be 45. Instead, you need to know these angles. And you can look them up in printing books if you know what you're looking for. But the important thing to remember is black is always at 45. And then the others are 30 degrees away from black and then 15 degrees away from each other. So cyan here is shown as 105 degrees. That's the same as 15 degrees, right? So I could put either of those in. So if I put 15 degrees, that's 30 degrees away from the black. And I say, okay, do it at 20 dots per inch. And so this gives me the cyan layer. It's still black because this is how film work is used in prints. So they would use this to make the film work, and then they would just fill that plate with cyan ink. But what I do to mimic it digitally is that I select only the, because remember this is a bitmap mode, there's only black and white here. There's no grayscale or anything else. So then I convert it back to grayscale. It just makes common sense. Then I select all the white and delete it all by duplicating it on its own layer and then getting rid of the background layer. Oh, gotta reverse that. La 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 la. Select all the white, select inverse, then duplicate just the black. So now it's in grayscale, and then I can do a color overlay of that and make that color overlay the perfect cyan, or the most I can get in CMYK. Oh, and I have to change it to RGB mode so it can see all of that. So it's a confusing process, and that's why I do it as an action. You just have to understand the principles of it. That this is what's required for printing. So this would be what the cyan film work looks like after it's printed. So then you do that with all 4 colors, you layer them on top of each other, and you get this. And you can play with the order that you layer the inks, like putting the cyan on top, all of that. But black is always printed last. Okay, next question.
Vector conversion?
So what do you need to know about vectors and how to convert them? So what if I take this same poster and I want to make it a vector? Well, first of all, I have to ask the question, would this image make a good vector? So what does a vector do? Well, a vector is basically like cutouts of paper, right? Vectors, when you convert them, when you live trace within Illustrator or use another tool like Vector Magic, it is not able to fill with gradients. It's only able to map a path and then fill it with a solid color. So let's see if this is a good one. Let me save it to the desktop here, and I'll save it as a test. And this is good review of a lot of other things we've done through the semester that we have videos of. But we did this with line work, right? And we made our line works into vector line work. But if I take this full color photo and I open it in Illustrator, it's a raster, a pixel-based image with millions of colors. Illustrator will be able to live trace it into a vector, but is that the right choice? Does that make sense? So you do not want to vectorize things, do a vector conversion to raster images that rely on a lot of gradients or subtleties in edges and color, because all of that will get lost. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is an image with all the glowing lights and lightsabers and things, will not make a strong vector. So if I live trace it, even if I do the high fidelity photo, notice how it looks nice and gradated here, but when it shows me a preview of the vector and I zoom in on it, it's going to look like camouflage. It's going to be lots of like chunky, irregular puzzle-shaped pieces. Because each vector path, and there'll be thousands of them once this is done, can only be filled with one solid color. But you'll notice that some things will vectorize really well, like the Star Wars logo type, because that's flat color, that's clean graphic edges, there's no soft edges or gradations in it, and so that's an appropriate thing to vectorize. It's having to find lots and lots of shapes. It's amazing Illustrator has the power to do this. While it's doing that, I can find an image that would be good for vectorizing. So let's look up a logo, for instance. Not all logos are clean, flat colors. But let's take the Google logo, their new one. That's going to vectorize very cleanly, even though it's a raster image that I'm taking from online. All right, so this is our vectorized preview. Look at Han Solo, more rugged than ever, right? And it's because even though it can make all of these beautiful vector shapes, and that's pretty cool to look at, the glow around the lightsaber, nothing is actually gradated there. It's just lots of stepped cutouts. So that doesn't make for the best vector conversion.